We are kicking off with NXT as last night Rhea Ripley was attacked off-screen in the parking lot and was left a bloodied mess as Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez walked away with weapons. In an update, WWE shared a picture of Ripley's skull and shared that she suffered a right orbital socket fracture during the attack, and she'll be out for an undisclosed amount of time. PW Insider adds that there is a real injury behind this angle, but there's no confirmation as to what it is and if it's different to WWE's claim of an orbital socket fracture. In a tweet, Ripley addressed her injury and said that her attackers made a fatal error, they left her breathing, teasing that she'll be hungry for revenge once she's back. Ripley's beef with Morgan, who disclosed on Logan Paul's podcast that she signed a new 5-year deal, isn't ending anytime soon, nor will her issues with Raquel Rodriguez. With specifics uncertain at this time, it appears that there's no certainty of when the star will return. Fans will have to wait to see when the star is finally back in action. Even if they put her on the shelf, Rhea is poised for a comeback for revenge, and do you think Ripley's absence will set the stage for an epic return? Let us know in the comments below. Despite his exit from WWE, Vince McMahon isn't done making headlines, and this week, news broke that McMahon plans to launch an entertainment hub company to produce films and TV. While the project isn't expected to have any ties to wrestling, we now have an update as Fightful reports that McMahon's team is exploring potential opportunities. Despite the initial buzz, skepticism from the entertainment world is already setting in, with one actor telling Fightful, "I find it hard to believe that anyone would attach themselves to this company considering his background, but there are plenty of people who just don't care and are desperate to get their project off the ground. I can't imagine anything actually getting done until his lawsuit is settled." The company has been in the works for months, with several WWE employees with seemingly stable roles unexpectedly leaving, and now these moves appear to be connected. WWE talent have confirmed that they've had no involvement and were kept in the dark, and while McMahon's return to entertainment has raised eyebrows, it's not without movement. Fightful adds that interviews have begun for potential roles in the new venture, but specific details remain scarce, and this project marks a pivotal change for McMahon. Whether the entertainment company will succeed or hit roadblocks remains to be seen, but McMahon appears determined to push forward after exiting TKO in January over legal troubles. What do you think of McMahon's latest move? Will his company take off, or is it doomed before it begins? Please share your thoughts and feedback in the comments section below. Over to this week's AEW Dynamite, and in his first match back, Swerve Strickland headlined the show against Shelton Benjamin, who had MVP with him in a highly competitive match. This match spotlighted Benjamin just as much as the former world champion, and the in-ring portion of the show ended with Strickland winning with the Swerve Stomp. After the match, however, a dismayed MVP made a phone call, and seconds later, Bobby Lashley made his AEW debut, attacking Swerve and laying out security to close the show. MVP grabbed the microphone after everything was over and yelled, "Guess who's back in business?" in a hot angle that immediately puts Lashley, MVP, and Shelton as a dominant force. That being said, it does raise the question of whether it would have had an even greater impact if the Moxley beatdowns had not become such a staple of recent shows in recent weeks. But what did you think of Lashley's long-awaited AEW debut and Tony Khan's booking of him so far? Let us know down below. During an appearance on the Lane Guys podcast, Bobby Lashley reflected on his WWE career and how plans shifted after his DQ win over Brock Lesnar at Elimination Chamber 2023. The plan for Lashley versus Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania was nixed when Bray missed the show due to illness, and all Lashley did on the show was hold his Andre the Giant Battle Royal trophy. From there, Lashley found himself pushed into the background, and while he began mentoring the Street Profits to be more serious, it felt to Lashley like his momentum was stalling. On the podcast, Lashley recalled his final major WWE chapter, WrestleMania 40's six-man tag match, and said despite the setbacks, he tried to shine in his limited time. He said, "That's when I got to the end of my career. I mean, when things changed. And it was like I got pulled off a lot of things, and I was like, okay, you can pull me off, but I said just as long as I get a second on TV. Anytime when I walked out, Bobby, the crowd went crazy. I was like, man, they're trying to bury me as much as they can. Pull me off WrestleMania for the first time in my entire career, just put me in the back where I was in the background just wearing a suit, doing nothing." Despite feeling marginalized, Lashley refused to let the situation dampen his spirit and tried to turn even small TV appearances into moments to stand out. Now Lashley has the chance to do just that, and fans expect him to be booked strongly under Tony Khan, a far contrast to how the final year of his WWE career would play out. Now, Toni Storm hasn't been seen on AEW TV since All In, and Mariah May has been having a blast as women's champion, but this week an interesting tease was used before Dynamite. Newspapers with a headline asking what happened to Toni Storm were seen waiting for fans at their seats, and whoever was tasked with spreading the newspapers did a very good job. This was a very innovative approach to drum up interest in the return of Storm, whose comeback could certainly stop the wave of momentum of Mariah May. May has been a strong champion, but fans are eager to see Storm again, and away from AEW, she's competed in 4 matches, 3 of which were in Stardom and 1 for CMLL. With that said, her hiatus from AEW may be coming to an end, judging by this newspaper, and we'll just have to wait and see what's next for the Timeless One. It was back in NXT that CJ Perry and Miro started dating, and their engagement in 2015 gained attention when it coincided with a storyline featuring Dolph Ziggler and Summer Rae. That angle was about Perry and Miro's fictional breakup, but the couple actually got married in 2016, but that didn't last forever as it was confirmed that they'd separated this year. Now Perry has seized a reunion of sorts as on Instagram she cosplayed as Tiffany, the bride of Chucky, and in the video mentioned she would bring her first husband Rusev back to life. While doing this, she used the Russian accent from her Lana days and even asked fans if they wanted to see Lana and Rusev back on TV, which fans in the comments were on board with. We'll have to wait and see whether CJ Perry and Miro will end up reuniting on television, especially as Perry is gone from AEW and Miro requested his release last month. It's clear fans would like to see them work together again in some capacity, especially if it's in WWE, which saw the bulk of their success in pro wrestling. Do you want to see CJ Perry and Miro work together again on television in the future? Please share your thoughts and feedback in the comments section below. Orange Cassidy kicked off Dynamite by demanding the production team shut down the latest video package from Jon Moxley and grabbed a microphone. Hesitant at first, Cassidy said he's not a leader but will oppose Moxley and his attempted hostile takeover of AEW and issued a challenge to the AEW World Champion. Cassidy walked to end a segment that featured passion and energy from Freshly Squeezed, who never came across as a seasoned talker and had a moment or two where he seemed at odds. Cassidy seeming uncomfortable makes sense within the context of his slacker character, and him standing up to Moxley and risking himself for AEW's future is a great development. Fans can't forget that Cassidy has a high-profile victory already over Moxley, and the AEW World Champion, flanked by his crew, would hit the ring later in the show. Moxley accepted the challenge before seemingly turning on Wheeler Yuta and threatened to give him the same fate as Chuck Taylor as he wrapped a chair around his neck. Cassidy made the save but was a victim of a beatdown by the heels, including Yuta, and the Dark Order evened the odds before Darby Allin descended from the rafters to join the battle. The Dark Order, being the Avengers of AEW, is fine on paper if they actually won a match or two before becoming a significant part of the show again, but this role seemed somewhat clunky. Top Flight arrived to fend off the heels in a segment that also saw the Young Bucks get involved, if nothing else than to shine the spotlight on themselves and make their way to the ring. This was actually very on brand for the EVPs, though this segment could have been presented earlier in the night when Cassidy was in the ring and would have given Dynamite a hotter start. As it is, it was fine, but advanced nothing in a meaningful way except to introduce Allin as the Sting to Cassidy's Diamond Dallas Page in a rehash of the NWO Hostile Takeover angle. Allin in the Sting role makes sense given their connection, and Cassidy as the workhorse standing up to the invaders of all he's worked for is a great call. At SummerSlam 2023, Cody Rhodes defeated Brock Lesnar in the Beast's most recent match to date and ending the feud between the two top-tier WWE superstars. While speaking on the Flagrant podcast, Rhodes spoke highly of his work with Lesnar, calling the Beast professional and easy to work with. Rhodes even said that the Beast incarnate had quite the unique gift after their feud, one that ensured that the American Nightmare wouldn't be hungry. He said, "I'll ruin it for some. His professionalism is so underrated. Oh wow, he is one of, if not the most professional and understanding of what we wanted. He sent me some of he has a farm in Canada. I hope you're not mad at me for sharing this, but he sent me an entire cow worth of steaks, and he took a picture of himself with the cow because he does it all as a real farmer. I thought, what a legend. But yeah, he was the utmost professional with me." Lesnar hasn't appeared since SummerSlam as he tied to the Vince McMahon trafficking lawsuit, and plans for a WrestleMania 40 match with Gunther were ultimately scrapped. Regardless, Cody Rhodes will always have respect for the Beast incarnate, and that's unlikely to change anytime soon. On the podcast, Rhodes also broke down his role as an EVP of AEW and why he considers it a failing venture on his part. He said, I had the management role with my previous company. I failed at that. I would say I didn't succeed, but I learned a lot from that failure. With WWE, if that's something that comes up for me, would you like to do something behind the scenes? It's certainly something I'm considering, because I had a whole run at it before where I bombed, so I'm like, you know what? I think I can get this now. I think I can figure it out. Rhodes' latest run in WWE has certainly been more influential than his previous run, as he's not only finished his story, but is the undisputed WWE champion. Would you consider Cody Rhodes' role as EVP of AEW a failure? What have you made of his WWE return? Please share your thoughts and feedback in the comments section below. Now, next week's NXT from the 2300 Arena will be chock full of ECW cameos, with Bully Ray, Francine, Dawn Marie, and Rob Van Dam all known to be making appearances. Fightful Select reports that even more cameos are expected for the event, which comes after PW Insider reported that Lita had been approached for the 10-woman tag match. Right now, 10 women have been announced, but Lita could replace one of the faces if they're written off. And who do you hope to see make a surprise appearance at next week's NXT? Speaking of NXT, Zaria's in-ring debut saw her demolish Brinley Reece this week, and at one point of the match, Reece's arm appeared to be dislocated and was popped in by Zaria. According to a report by Fightful Select, Reece's arm popping out was a planned spot, and she was said to be fine afterwards, as she, like Alexa Bliss, is double-jointed. Bliss has used this spot in her matches, and it's good that Reece is doing fine after what appeared to be a rather gruesome injury on this week's show. Adam Cole had to take on both Buddy Matthews and a previously injured ankle on Dynamite in search of a win that would get him one step closer to facing MJF at Full Gear. A spill to the floor saw Cole sell his ankle, seemingly having re-injured it, and Matthews targeted the joint only for Cole to stay in the fight through the tremendous resiliency and toughness. Cole fought through it all, and with a sudden Hulk Hogan-esque Hulk up, he started his comeback, and after 2 Panama Sunrises, one being on the floor, Cole got the win. 3/4 of the match's story were superbly executed until Cole set aside selling his injured ankle to deliver his Panama Sunrise with no sign of any problems. He simply launched himself off the turnbuckles or ring apron and landed with all of the weight on the same foot, nearly led to him walking out on the match. Outside of that glaring flaw, this was a well-established match that highlighted Cole's quest for a match with MJF as he showed toughness, gutted out the pain, and got the win. Matthews, who's good enough to beat anyone on any night, played his part, and afterwards, darkness filled the arena, and when the lights came back, Malachi Black was in the ring. It's clear that Black will be the next task in Cole's path to Full Gear, and a match with MJF, as the Boom is hungry for payback on the man he once called a friend. After nearly a year out due to injury, Aussie Open's Mark Davis was on Dynamite to confront Don Callis and Kyle Fletcher and denounced his longtime teammates' actions and walked away. Fletcher ominously warned that he'll have to make a decision sooner or later in a short, sweet segment that reintroduced Davis and continued to establish Fletcher's new villainous role. It also set the stage for Davis having to choose between Fletcher and Will Ospreay, who led the United Empire during their time in New Japan. Backstage, Renee Paquette caught up with Hangman Page, who issued a warning to Switchblade Jay White ahead of their match at Full Gear. Page promised to defeat White no matter what it took, in another great showcase from the best character in AEW and someone who needs to be back as a focal point of creative. This was a solid, story-driven segment featuring 2 brief but impactful promos that left fans eager to see much more from all involved. Private Party took on World Tag Champs the Young Bucks this week, with the stipulation that if Zay and Quen didn't win the gold, they'd disband. With that in mind, the challengers absorbed everything thrown at them by the EVPs, as well as a concentrated attack from Kazuchika Okada. Quen errantly blasted Cassidy with a ring bell by accident, busting his tag team partner open and teasing dissension between the pair, regardless of what the result would be. In the end, it was Private Party who got to live to see another day, as they got the win and their first taste of tag team gold since joining AEW 5 years ago. A match that thrived on dramatic near falls and the fans' emotional investment in the challengers, it was another gem in a series of them between the 2 teams. After the bell, Matt and Nick Jackson placed the title belts on the shoulders of the victors, hinting at a potential change in character in the process. Perhaps the Bucks will be the saviors of AEW in the face of Jon Moxley and his acolytes, though there's likely more interesting outcomes possible from here on. As for the title change, this was an outcome fans deserved at WrestleDream, and they got it this week on Dynamite. New ROH World Champion Chris Jericho, alongside his students Big Bill and Brian Keith, cut a promo from the aisle, with Jericho promising to take ROH to new levels. Jericho said he'd do it the same way he elevated AEW and Terrifier 3, taking credit for the new horror film in which he has a relatively minor role. It was a short, sweet promo that was subdued compared to the regular fare from this incarnation of the Nueve, but how he actually benefits ROH long-term remains to be seen. Backstage, Mark Briscoe, joined by Tomohiro Ishii and Kyle O'Reilly, issued a challenge to the Learning Tree for a fight without honor on next week's show. This match has since been made official and will certainly be violent when the two sides do battle on the November 6th show. Backstage, Daniel Garcia had a brief confrontation with TNT champ Jack Perry, who followed it up by interrupting the Young Bucks, who were loading up belongings and shredding documents. What those documents were is unknown, but it is likely part of a storyline development that will serve as the next chapter in a story that feels like it lost its direction and focus a while ago. The Jacksons promised Perry that they'd talk, and it'll be interesting to see what comes from these conversations, as a shift may be coming within the Elite. A strong video package highlighting Anna Jay ahead of her match with AEW Women's World Champion Mariah May on Saturday night on Collision aired. Now, Kris Statlander has been in pursuit of Mercedes Moné and the TBS Championship, and on this week's Dynamite, that pursuit saw her take on the CEO's bodyguard, Kamille. A highly competitive match between the pair saw Kamille poised to get the win late, followed by a failed 450 splash from Statlander, but the former champion refused to be denied. Instead, the resilient babyface fought back and scored the victory, to the dismay of Moné, who leveled her top contender with the title and taunted her to close out the segment. This was a solid match with good action, but felt like an abbreviation of what it could and should have been, with Kamille never feeling like a threat to defeat Statlander. Despite Kamille truly establishing herself as a star pre-AEW, nothing the competitors did changed the perception that Statlander's win wasn't a question of if, but when. Still, the action was solid, there was some noticeable chemistry, and both competitors worked hard to make this match feel more important than it actually was. Unfortunately, the AEW crowd continued to show a noticeable lack of interest in Moné and anything she has her hands on in this run, in a worrying sign for the TBS champion. And that was this week's edition of Dynamite, and what did you think of the show? Let us know in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching.